All right. If we could, we're going to go ahead and call the MAG Regional Council meeting to order for June 22nd. I need to do a roll call of members to determine if we have a quorum. So please state you're here if when I call your name. We have Councilmember Barker from Apache
Here.
Junction. We have Governor Lewis. Gila River, okay. Mayor Barney from Queen Creek.
Here.
We have Mayor Beinwiller from Paradise Valley. Jerry.
Here. Thank you.
Mayor Carlott. Mayor Daniels. Mayor Dickey.
Here.
Mayor Gallego.
Here.
Mayor Giles.
Here.
Proxy for Mayor Hall, we have Vice Mayor Chris Judd.
Here.
Mayor Hartke.
Here.
Mayor Hermosillo. Mayor Hermosillo. Mayor Lane. Mayor Lane. Mayor LaVault.
Yes, sir. I'm here and healthy.
That's good. Mayor Lord's here. Mayor Meck.
Here.
Mayor Meck. I'm the chair. I'm here. Mayor Molina.
Here.
How you doing, Mayor? Mayor Pereira from Mayor Wickenburg. Mayor Peterson.
Here.
Mayor Price.
Here.
Mayor Schoaf.
Hello,
Mayor Schoaf.
I'm
You
here,
here?
Mark. Yes,
Okay.
Chair, Mr. Chair,
Mayor-
I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Sykes. Mayor Tovar. Mayor Walter. Mayor Wires.
I am present.
Mayor Weiss.
Here.
Mr. Elters from the State Transportation Board. Mr. Elters. All right. President Burnett from Fort McDowell. Mayor, President Harvier.
Here.
Hello, President. Mayor, Supervisor Hickman. Supervisor Hickman. Supervisor House. Vice Mayor Smith. All right. Eric, I think we have a quorum.
Mr. Chairman, we do have a quorum and Mayor Daniels joined the meeting too.
I just saw that comment. Perfect. All righty. Is anyone else on the phone that I have not called? If you have not heard your name called, let me know.
Mayor Mitchell, this is Mayor Anna Tovar.
Mayor Tovar, okay, you're present. That's good. Anybody else? All right. If we could, we're going to go ahead and cite the Pledge of Allegiance. I think we may have a flag. There it is. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance to the flag
Of the
United States of
Of
America,
America.
And to the republic.
Republic for which it stands,
stands,
one nation,
One nation.
under God,
Under God.
indivisible,
indivisible,
With
with
liberty,
liberty
and justice
justice for all.
for all. Thank you. All right, next item on our agenda is our Executive Director's Report. Mr. Eric Anderson will provide a report to the Regional Council on activities of general interest. Mr. Anderson.
If I'm muted, thank you, Mr. Chairman. We can go to the next slide. Obviously it's supposed to be 112 today. We have to make sure that we have enough resources to keep everybody hydrated out there. Because of the coronavirus pandemic we're in right now, we have had a downturn in donations of water as well as volunteers. And so you can see the numbers there. We had 110 locations last year. We're only at 37 this year. So it's really important that we continue to support this effort to make sure that we keep our people out who don't have shelter, make sure they're hydrated. Go to the next slide. So we continue to look at the 2020 census. Just to remind you that the census extended the deadline for the count to the end of October of this fall. Arizona, we're still running a little bit under the US average from a state perspective. Maricopa County, we're a little bit above. Pinal County is significantly below. This is really important, obviously, for the allocation of revenues, both at the state level and the federal level. And we have to continue to, this is really important for all the kinds of planning that MAG does, as well as our member agencies. So make sure we encourage people, if they haven't filled out the census, to continue to do that. Next slide. We also have a meeting office space safety assessment underway. This is something that we were going to launch about 1.5 years ago. We had to wait for some activities in the building to be completed, but we'll be working with our consultant on assessing the safety precautions that we have in the building. Obviously, we want to make sure that when we have public meetings, again, that everybody stays safe. And so Amy St. Peter is the project manager for MAG on this, and have been involved in the plan for this particular study too. Go to the next slide. And then I'm also very pleased to announce that for the 20th year in a row, we've won the GFOA award. The Government Finance Officers Association presents this award for distinguished budget presentation. This is for our Unified Planning Annual Budget and Work Program. So once again, we're very proud of this because this is the document that guides our activities now over 2-year period. We're about to enter our 2nd year in our work program. So, Mr. Chairman, that completes my report. I'd be happy to answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Anybody have any questions for Eric, Mr. Anderson? All right, we're going to move on to the consent agenda. Item 4A through 4K are on the consent agenda. Does any member of the Regional Council have any questions or request a presentation on any of the consent agenda items? If not, could I have a motion?
Kevin Harkey, so move.
Moved by Mayor Harkey. Is there a second?
Robin Barker, second.
Been seconded by Councilmember Barker. I'm gonna have to do a roll call vote. Councilmember Barker,
Yes.
Governor Lewis, Mayor Barney,
Yes.
Mayor Wilner,
Yes, aye.
Mayor Carlott, Mayor Daniels,
Aye.
Mayor Dickey,
Aye.
Mayor Gallego,
Aye.
Mayor Giles,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Chris Judd,
Aye.
Mayor Harkey,
Yes.
Mayor Hermosillo, Mayor Lane, Mayor Laval,
Yes.
Mayor Lord,
Aye.
Mayor Meck, Mayor Meck. I vote aye, as Mayor Mitchell. Mayor Molina,
Aye.
Mayor Perea. Mayor Peterson. Mayor Peterson. Mayor Price.
Aye.
Mayor Schoaf. Mayor
Aye.
Schoaf. Votes aye.
Aye.
Mayor Sykes. Mayor Sykes. Mayor Tovar.
Aye.
Mayor Walter. Mayor Wires.
I'm present. I'm present. Aye.
Mayor Weiss.
Aye.
We have Mr. Elters. President Burnett. President Javier.
Aye.
Supervisor Hickman. Supervisor House. And Vice Mayor Smith. That's all I have. I believe that motion does carry forward. That would be it. I also wanted to congratulate the new Economic Development Committee chairs, Councilmember David Luna from Mesa and Vice Chair Mayor Alexis Hermosillo from El Mirage. Now we will go ahead and move on to item number 5. We will move on item number 5, the coronavirus update. Pam Cayley is going to be president of the Arizona Blue Cross Blue Shield. We'll discuss the Mask Update Arizona campaign, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Anderson to introduce this item. Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Very pleased to have Pam here today. Pam is President CEO of Blue Cross Blue Shield. She's also very active. She's on the leadership team within Greater Phoenix Leadership. So Greater Phoenix Leadership has pushing the Mask Up Arizona, and it's very timely, certainly a timely topic to be talking about today. So Pam, you can take it from here.
Thank you very much, Eric. And good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and Regional Council members. I'm delighted to be here. I am the president of and CEO of Blue Cross Blue Shield of Arizona, but today I'm here in the capacity of a board member of Greater Phoenix Leadership Council. If you could go to the next slide, please. Okay. So the earlier this year, as it became very clear that COVID-19 was going to have a significant impact on our state, Neil Giuliano, the CEO of Greater Phoenix Leadership, and as I understand, a former chair of this fine organization, commissioned a health sector task force to collaborate on ways to mitigate the impact of COVID-19 on Arizona. This list is the GPL health sector members that participate on this task force and who I am representing today. Next slide. Okay. I think this is something you've probably seen before, but I thought it was important just to open with this. This reflects the 7-day average reported COVID cases per 100,000 residents. And Arizona, as you can see, is the highest in the nation. This is data taken as of Monday of this week, so very, very current. Next slide, please. This is a really complicated looking slide, and I apologize, but I thought it was important to put COVID-19 in the context of other disease outbreaks that the world has experienced. On this chart, if you look at the y-axis is the fatality rate, and the x-axis is the level of contagiousness. COVID-19 on this chart is the red triangle in that yellow box there up toward the top left. The flu is down at the bottom left, is kind of an orange yellowish color. Many people compare COVID-19 with the flu, so I wanted to call out the differences here, and I thought this graph did a good job of that. COVID is about 2 times more contagious than the flu, and in terms of fatality rates, you can see COVID is much, much higher on this chart than the flu, indicating it's significantly more deadly than the flu. Over the 2018 to 2019 flu season, 34,000 people died in the United States from the flu, compared to where we're sitting now with COVID-19 deaths at about 120 or over 121,000. Next slide, please. The big hope, everybody is hoping that herd immunity will occur and all of our issues will go away. But as you can see by these charts, that we are very, very far away from herd immunity. And really the only likely way that we're going to see herd immunity is actually to get a vaccine. If you could go to the next slide. This slide is helps understand when we might expect a vaccine. This is a case study that I'm presenting as a guideline. This is shows the development of a vaccine for H1N1. And as you can see on this timeline from when H1N1 first emerged, they saw the first case to when a vaccine was finally developed, it was a period of about 18 months. And once that vaccine was developed, that was the official end of the pandemic. The good news is there is lots of work being done right now on vaccines. We have 129 in development and 13 of them are already in human trials. So very hopeful that we'll see something early next year in terms of the vaccine. Next slide, please. So this is it, to wear or not to wear a mask. That is certainly the question of the day. And I was so delighted to see some of you actually wearing masks. I'm in my home right now, so there's nobody around me, so I'm not wearing one, but I do appreciate that role modeling. This has sadly become one of the most contentious issues being debated in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. A key factor fueling the debate has honestly just been the limited amount of research on how effective masks are in preventing the spread of COVID-19. Unfortunately, in addition to that lack of research, there has been very mixed messaging, with the administration coming out at the very beginning of the year saying that masks are not only not necessary, but they're not effective. We now at this stage have a greater understanding of how the virus is spread, and we have research that supports how masks are very effective reducing the spread of COVID-19. Next slide, please. Curbing COVID-19 requires an understanding of the virus transmission routes. Initially, nobody understood much about this virus, much less how it was transmitted. Next slide. And I'm certainly not going to do an anatomy lesson here for you because I am grossly underqualified to do such a thing, but I would like to just highlight how this virus is transmitted to make the connection to the importance of masks. Transmission of COVID-19 arises from coughing or sneezing by an infected person, which produces virus-containing droplets that they don't travel very far because they're pretty heavy, but that also produces, that's cough or sneeze, produces lighter aerosols that do disperse in the air. The bottom line is the virus is transmitted by an infected person's droplets or aerosols coming from their nose or mouth, which then enters an uninfected person's body through their nose or mouth, and now we're understanding possibly eyes as well. This is why masks covering the mouth and nose are so critical. Next slide. Very quickly, in April this year, CDC encouraged all Americans to wear cloth face masks in public when social distancing was difficult. And as of June 11th, there are now 39 states that have some kind of a mask mandate, varying degrees, but have something out there regarding mask mandates. Next slide, please. Now, we are months into this disease and we're finally starting to understand more about it. We are evolving from misinformation to science-backed information. And there have been a number of studies on face mask usage related to COVID-19. I've included 4 studies in this deck for your information, but in the interest of time, I'm just going to cover 2 of them. This is one I want to speak to. This was an analysis of pandemic trends from January to May. And the researchers focused on 2 geographic areas that experienced the COVID-19 virus early on, both Italy and New York. And the next slide, if you click to that, shows the outcome of the study. These two graphs show the contrasting trends of new infections between New York and then the United States. The top graph is daily new infections in New York, and the bottom graph is daily new infections in the United States minus New York. The red line represents the daily new cases. Now you can see the vertical lines there, they show the dates that certain mitigating things were implemented. So things like stay-at-home order, mandating masks, social distancing. You can see the dramatic decline in new cases on the top chart there in New York after masks were mandated, while cases in the rest of the US were at this particular time, most of the states did not have any mask guidance during this time period, showed no decline. You go to the next slide, please. This is another study. Flip again to the next one after that. Another one from this is a research arm of the University of Washington, determined that 50% reduction in COVID transmission if masks are worn. And then we'll go to the last one here, which I'll spend a moment on. This slide, I just took 2 data points to create this admittedly disturbing visual. The World Health Organization studied 25,000 people in 16 countries and concluded that the chance of infection with a mask is 17% in a public setting, and without a mask is 3%. Excuse me, I said that backwards. Without a mask is 17%, and with a mask is 3%. So all that I've done here is created 2 scenarios using the data from the World Health Organization. On the left is the scenario where 1,000 people are in public with masks, and on the right is the scenario where there's 1,000 people in public with no masks. And just applying the math to the numbers, you can see the mask wearing scenario, the ultimate end is 2 deaths. The not mask wearing ultimate end is 10 deaths. So this is not a political issue. It's not even a question of freedom. This is just simply a life and death proposition that we're talking about here. And then the next slide. The Greater Phoenix Leadership Health Sector Task Force has been collaborating on a lot of different things related to COVID-19 and how we can best mitigate the risk in Arizona. One of them is the mask campaign. The Mask Up Arizona visual concept was developed by the Flynn Foundation. And to date, we've sent the campaign to all GPL CEOs, which is about 150 of them. And we've asked them to use these materials to educate their own employees as well as their customers. The Arizona Department of Health has just agreed to use this campaign, which we're really excited about. Blue Cross Blue Shield of Arizona has sent out articles, masks to members, and we will be adding this Mask Up Arizona logo to our explanation of benefits that go out after a claim is filed. Another thing we're doing is we're currently working with the Diamondbacks to create a public service message for television broadcast, and they have a script, and we're working through that. And lastly, and I hope you have seen this, we have almost 80 billboards that were donated by the amazing company Clear Channel. And if you flip to the next slide, you can actually see them there. They are in both English and Spanish, and they're throughout the state. And then the very last slide, if you could click to that, thank you. In conclusion, I would say implementing policies without a scientific basis could lead to very challenging consequences, which we have seen over the course of this pandemic. Mask wearing is scientifically proven to reduce infection rates. And just this month, you might have read this story, we had a real world example of mask effectiveness in Missouri. There were 2 hairstylists that tested positive for COVID-19. When they were working, they were wearing their cloth face masks for their shifts. They went back to the 140 customers and employees that they worked with, and not one of them that had been exposed during their shifts were infected. It's really rare that the entire world has one common enemy, but that is the situation we now find ourselves in. And the most effective way to fight a common enemy is with just a coordinated and unified front. And mask wearing has been scientifically proven to reduce infection and mitigate spread. And we can encourage people here in the state to wear masks. We can keep our businesses open, and most importantly, we can save lives. And I thank you all very, very much for the time here today.
All right. Hey, thank you, Pam, so much for that and for the great presentation. Are there any questions from the membership? This item is for information only and discussion only. So Pam, again, thank you so much for the valuable information. And it might be helpful if we could request the slideshow so that we can have that for our residents in our own communities. That might be helpful. There's good information out there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chairman Mitchell, this is Mayor Wires.
Yes, Mayor Wires.
Would it be possible, asking Pam, would it be possible for us to get some of those masks that you had there?
The Mask Up Arizona masks?
Yes.
You know, we didn't actually produce those. Those are just the kind of the logo look. But I have some Blue Cross Blue Shield of Arizona masks I could send you, Mayor Ware. I'd be happy to do that.
Okay, well, I thought that was a pretty cool mask with Arizona and basically the message at the same time.
Yeah,
Okay.
We'll look at producing some. I think that's a good idea. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Great, thank you. All right, moving on to the next item. Item number 6 is a draft fiscal year 2021 Freeway Life Cycle Program. And Mr. John Bolin will be providing a report. Mr. Bolin.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the Regional Council. Happy to be here to present this item today, which is on your agenda for action. Next slide, please. So the Freeway Life Cycle Program, or FLCP as we call it for short, is the management tool to implement freeway and highway projects in Proposition 400. You might recall that we just went through the formal approval process of the program back in September, which really was the culmination of about a year and a half worth of effort to rebalance the program. As part of that rebalance effort, we made a commitment to go through an annual update process where we reflect new revenue forecasts, we update project costs, and we update project schedules. And so today's agenda item represents the fiscal year 2021 freeway program. Next slide, please. So there's 3 main revenue sources that flow into the program. That includes a good portion of the half-cent sales tax, known as Regional Area Road Fund, or RARF. We also get a portion of the Highway User Revenue Fund, as well as a portion of ADOT federal funds. Every year, we update the RARF and HERF forecast in the fall, and then the federal forecast is updated somewhat on an ad hoc basis, depending on what goes on with federal transportation legislation. But later in the presentation, I'll touch on some of the implications of the COVID crisis on the revenues. Next slide, please. Another commitment we made as part of the rebalance process was to go through biannual cost updates. And so we have done just that in close coordination with ADOT and their consulting team. And so the costs reflected in this version of the freeway program were actually generated in January of this year. Of course, the implication there is that these costs are pre-COVID as well. Next slide, please. So when we put the program together, we really back up all the way into February, just considering the revenue update process as well as the cost process. There's a number of reasons for this, but it's primarily driven by the transportation conformity process and the need to input it into our model and then go through a public involvement process. So the cash flow that you see on the screen is the scenario as of February of this year. And as you can see, we're ending the program with a healthy fund balance of approximately $300 million, which is about $200 million above our guideline variance, which, as I'll talk about momentarily, positions us well to deal with some of the potential outfalls of the COVID situation. Next slide, please. So as I've noted several times, we put this program together. It was well finalized in February of this year. Since then, there's been a number of changes, particularly on the revenue side. And so This is something that we continue to work very closely with our partners over at ADOT. It's an evolving situation. The current plan is to pull together the revenue forecasting panel in August of this year to generate updated revenue forecasts that reflect changes caused by the COVID pandemic. I also included some of the revenue impacts based on once the pandemic had started. So in terms of our half-cent sales tax, March, we saw a decrease of just over 5%. April, full month of that, we saw a decrease of just over 12%. On the HERF side, we don't have data yet for April, but in March, with the significant decrease in vehicle miles traveled, we certainly saw a dip there, about 13.5% when you compare it to last year's revenues. So moving forward, this is an item that we'll be very plugged into. We'll continue to communicate with you and your staffs, track the actual revenues. There's been lots of discussion too about additional stimulus legislation, including some possible funding for transportation. And so that, of course, could potentially have an impact in the freeway program. So we'll monitor that closely. And then also track the other side of the equation, which is right-of-way and construction costs, what the potential impacts might be, and make sure that we're reflecting those in the program. Next slide, please. So, Mr. Chairman, that concludes my brief presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Boland. Any questions from the membership, the fiscal year 2021 Freeway Life Cycle Program? If not, can I get a motion for item number 6?
Move for approval of item number 6, Mayor Barney.
Moved by Mayor Barney. Is there a second?
Second, Georgia Lord.
Seconded by Mayor Lord. Okay, I'm going to do a roll call vote. Councilmember Barker,
Yes.
Governor Lewis, Mayor Barney,
Aye.
Mayor Bine-Wilner,
Aye.
Mayor Carlott, Mayor Daniels,
Aye.
Mayor Dickey,
Aye.
Mayor Gallego,
Aye.
Mayor Giles,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Chris Judd,
Aye.
Mayor Hartke,
Yes.
Mayor Hermosillo,
Yes.
Mayor Lane, he's not here, Mayor Laveau,
Yes.
Mayor Lord,
Aye.
Mayor Meck, Mayor Mitchell, I vote aye. Mayor Molina,
Yes.
Mayor Peterson. Les, are you there, Mayor Peterson? Mayor Price,
Yes.
Mayor Schoaf,
Aye.
Mayor Sykes, Mayor Tovar, I believe you're on.
Aye.
Mayor Walter, Mayor Wires,
Aye.
Mayor Weiss, Mr. Elters, President Burnett, President Javier,
Aye.
Supervisor Hickman, Supervisor House, or Vice Mayor Smith. I believe we have a majority of ayes. Thank you very much. Moving on to the next item, item number 7 is our agenda. Item 7 is an update on the development of a new regional transportation plan. And Ms. Audra Kester-Thomas, she will be providing that report. Ms. Thomas.
Thank you, Chairman Mitchell and members of Regional Council. Pleased to be here with you this afternoon to give you an update on the latest activities associated with the development of the next regional transportation plan and extension of Proposition 400. I have quite a lengthy presentation and we'll pause halfway through, making sure that you don't have any questions. But we're really looking for your feedback today, and specifically, next slide, as we talk about the vision and goals that we have drafted and circulated now over a month ago. As I go through my presentation as well, I will report what we've already heard. This material was all presented to the Management Committee work group at the end, or about a month ago, as well as to each of our committees earlier this month, Management Committee and Transportation Policy Committee before it. As you'll recall, your direction last year was to have our managers more involved in the development process, and action was taken to develop the Management Committee work group at the end of last year. So I will report some of that feedback we've received to date, but we're really looking for your direction here at the end of the presentation, because we'll be building from it the next layers of our performance evaluation framework as part of our ongoing planning process. So with that, we'll focus on two major things today: our call for projects update, giving you a little bit better composition of what we received with it, as well as giving you an update on the sketch estimates associated now with having the chance to review those submissions, as well as present our draft vision and goals for your consideration. Next slide. So again, starting here with the call for projects update, an opportunity to give you a better summary of what we received. Next slide. Before we did that, however, I wanted to refresh our memories on really the composition of Proposition 400 today. We talk a lot at MAG about our Freeway Life Cycle Program, just previously presented by Mr. Bolin, the Transit Life Cycle Program at Valley Metro, for those of you who serve on that board, as well as the Arterial Life Cycle Program, which was on your consent agenda earlier today. While those three programs make up over 95% of funding in this region, we do have a couple of other regionally significant programs that, while smaller scale, certainly represent a significant investment here in the region. So just to refresh our memories on it, we have, of course, the formula funds that come through for our 5310 program. We have a couple active transportation programs, both to assist with design as well as implementation of infrastructure. We have several safety programs, including our Safe Routes to School program and regional roadway safety assessments, systems management and operations program, several air quality programs, including our regional rideshare and trip reduction program as pass-throughs to our partners at the county and Valley Metro, in addition to street sweepers and paving of unpaved roads. Of course, our Don't Trash Arizona program and litter and landscape on our freeways, as well as the Pinell County Arterial and Bridge program established after the 2010 census. Next slide. So at your direction at the end of last year, we advanced the call for projects, and we initiated that call at the beginning of January. We ultimately extended it through middle of April on the onset of the pandemic. And when all said was done, we received about 1,300 individual project and program ideas from all of you. Next slide. But now, having had the chance to actually dig into the data a little bit and better acquaint ourselves with those submissions, we wanted to report out and summarize really the composition of what those projects were. And so I'm going to briefly visit each of these 15 buckets of projects, if you will, that really characterize the type and kind of projects we received. So no particular order. Next slide. We'll start with freeway projects, highway projects, and parkway capital projects. We received many new facilities, but also capacity improvements to existing facilities, as well as many traffic interchanges. I think that was a surprise to us. Also of note, submissions for the reconstruction and modernization of existing infrastructure. I think you'll see this is a recurring theme throughout many of these buckets. It represents not just the new challenge for us moving forward, that we still have capacity improvements we need to make, but we are now in the stage of having to revisit, modernize, and in some cases reconstruct the facilities and investments we had previously made. Next slide. We expected and you delivered a robust number of arterial roadway capital projects, many new facilities, but also capacity improvements to existing arterial projects. Again, reconstruction and modernization of facilities, as well as distinct support for implementation of our freight planning work. Next slide. We received a robust number of arterial intersection capital improvements for both major and minor arterials. In addition to the discrete capital projects, significant emphasis on ITS projects, and then you'll see here asterisks, safety improvements, a key theme you'll see that really threads through many of these different buckets. Next slide. A roadway other category. Here you'll see not just arterials, but local collector and other street improvements. A number of bridge projects, whether it's crossing of dry riverbeds, many railroad crossing projects that we received. Again, reconstruction and modernization of that infrastructure. Submissions for roundabouts or complete streets. Suggestions for bringing roadways up to standards so that ADOT can turn those back to local communities, as well as, again, safety. Next slide. Pavement preservation, a topic of conversation now for a couple of years, as we have diminishing proceeds coming in from HERF that flow through to you. We saw a robust number of arterial and street pavement preservation projects come through the call for projects. Next slide. Not a surprise, we received both capital and operations submissions for commuter rail, certainly a mode of transportation MAG has spent over a decade studying. Next slide. We received a robust number of high capacity transit submissions for both capital as well as operations. Certainly light rail extensions, overlay service in some of our higher footprint areas, a number of streetcar submissions across the region, as well as support for regional implementation of bus rapid transit. Next slide. This category, our regional bus service, comprises a large number of investments, both capital and operations, and really is reflective of a number of projects and continued support for our existing commitments to operating transit service in this region. So a significant number of continuation and support, as well as expansion of our regional grid service already existing in this region. Continued investment in and expansion of our express and commuter bus service. Continued investment in fleet and asset management support. Park and rides, operations and maintenance centers, as well as transit centers and mobility hubs as well throughout the region.
Hey, Auditor, real quick, can we make sure that everyone can mute their microphone if you're not speaking? Thank you. Sorry, Audra.
Thank you, Chairman Mitchell. This is just a robust amount of projects here. It really recognizes the desire to expand transit throughout the region. We're working with our partners, specifically Valley Metro, to take a bit of a service planning approach to this, especially when it comes to the bus service operations as part of the projects that were submitted. Next slide. Next slide. Can we advance the next slide?
It seems Craig lost communication. Audra, just 1 second. I'm bringing that back up.
Okay, thank you. If we can go back a couple of slides, I think we advanced a couple too many here. Yes, I think that's where we're at. Thank you so much. So picking up where we left off, we received a variety of other transit submissions as well, many circulators, microtransit solutions, first and last mile, localized transit, flexible or on-demand service, bus stops, flexibility there, as well as ADA service. Next slide. Active transportation, we received a number of project submissions above and beyond the recently accepted active transportation plan. And if I were to characterize the submissions we received, real emphasis on dedicated, buffered, or separated facilities for our vulnerable users, bicyclists and pedestrians, many bike boulevards, and those kinds of investments. But again, a common theme of bridging gaps, whether it's bridges, canals, and other connections throughout the region. Lighting came up a lot, sidewalks, ADA kinds of improvements, as well as continuation of support for our design assistance program. Next slide. Safety, again, you've seen this as a common theme already. Just a robust number of projects coming in that really emphasize continued investment in existing programs like Safe Routes to School and our roadway safety assessments, but expanding to educational programming or traffic calming, as well as a variety of other infrastructure improvements. Next slide. Again, continued support for our intelligent transportation systems, or ITS as we call it for short. Support for both management and operations centers, capital as well as operations. Lots of acknowledgement that fiber plays an important role in this region, as well as acknowledgement that we have emerging technologies, even if we don't know what they are, that there is intent for, support for, setting aside funding so that when those technologies mature, the region can best respond. Next slide. Transportation demand management, certainly acknowledgement at the regional level for a more sophisticated approach to TDM strategies, but also a support for capital and operations at a very localized level. Next slide. Continuation for planning and support activities at a regional level, whether that's through transportation studies or set aside funding for pilot programs, so we can really best identify technologies before we implement at a large scale. Support for continuation of traffic counts at a regional level, important planning tool for all of us, as well as acknowledgement of the ongoing administrative activities, both with inventorying and asset management from a federal level, but also grant support as well. Next slide. And then our other infrastructure category, this is a collection of several things that don't fit neatly in another category. These are some examples for you. Local street sign replacements, traffic signals and replacements at a local level, street lights and LED conversions, electric vehicle charging infrastructure, public art maintenance, tree replacement programs. So just a variety of things that fall into this other category. Next slide. Wanted to bring your attention to a couple things that weren't submitted, but are important to acknowledge. So we're in an air quality containment area, as you are all well aware, and the region is committed to many mitigation factors that we need to continue investment in, or even expansion thereof, to ensure the federal funding that flows into this region continues. And so we didn't see any dedicated projects for the continuation of street sweepers or ride share, or even unpaved roads. But we want to note and point out that these are commitments, investments that this region will continue and not expand into the next regional transportation plan. We also didn't see submissions for the freeway management system, again, an acknowledgement of the importance of our high capacity infrastructure for more than just moving of people. Although there were a significant amount of fiber submissions, the region definitely sees the benefit for an FMS investment across our system, as well as any really large scale technology ideas, although the region has talked often about this being an important aspect to consider moving into the next RTP. Next slide. So in addition to just having the chance to go through and look at all of the submissions, we also wanted to revisit our sketch estimates that we provided as a planning tool last fall. So next slide. So last fall, you'll recall, as part of our conversations regarding enabling legislation, we did some planning level sketch estimates about the potential needs that are in the region, as well as some initial projected funding or revenue projections. And again, this was intended simply to be a planning exercise, underscoring a couple of things, and most importantly, that we certainly aren't starting fresh. We have projected that Proposition 400 will have about 40% at least less proceeds than we initially projected back in 2003. And that means, as you are all painfully aware, deferred projects, real projects that we will not otherwise be able to deliver. And so we have already a bucket of those kinds of things that are sitting waiting for a potential funding source. Additionally, we know that we're already encumbered uniquely with Proposition 400 in supporting operations, in this case, bus operations. And I think there has been an expectation, and certainly as we saw through the call for projects, intent to grow support for a transit program in this region. So acknowledgement that we're not starting fresh, that we already have encumbered funding moving forward, and considerations of deferred projects. And again, this wasn't inclusive of several important things. We didn't really have a good idea of what our arterial program needs might look like, or safety and technology at that time. And we certainly hadn't heard from you. And so this is really an opportunity for us in going through these call for projects to be able to update it. Next slide. So you'll remember this slide from last fall. Knowing what we knew then in terms of studied and deferred projects and needs at a system-wide level, we were estimating between $50 and $60 billion worth of needs. We had also done some sketch estimates and assumed continuation just of a 0.5-cent sales tax, as well as the federal funding and state funding that flows into the region. And we had projected that at about $30 billion, with the acknowledgement that high capacity transit projects would compete for and be awarded CIG or federal transit discretionary funding to enable those high capacity transit investments for which this region has been much successful in previously. Next slide. So we've updated based on the call. Again, nothing new here. It's still high level. We're intending simply to show an order of magnitude. And a couple additional points that we want to point out. We are cognizant that only about half of the call for project submissions actually included estimates. It wasn't required, of course. So we do certainly have a lot more work to do in refining those cost estimates. Additionally, there was some inconsistency, as you can imagine, across project types. And so we'll need to do a more thorough job as we move further into this process and really refining and validating project costs, especially with those highest performing projects. And then again, this is really intended simply to discuss kind of the exploration of the submission concepts. Many communities submitted community-focused programs. We have to take those ideas and then apply them to the entire region. So we've had to do a little bit of the back of the napkin estimates on those as well. So next slide. Taking that as a whole, probably no surprise to any of us, our deficit has grown. And you'll see at highway capital with the submissions we received from now between 7 and 20 billion in terms of estimate of freeway capital needs. Addition to active transportation investments above and beyond what's included in the accepted plan. Technology needs, operations and maintenance facilities of our arterial network, that was significant. And so we've increased that estimate to between 4 and 8 billion now. You'll see high capacity transit with the number of submissions we received increasing between 10 and 16 billion. Again, a robust number of new arterial improvements, so 6 to 12 billion there, as well as safety recognition. You'll see an asterisk next to bus transit. As I noted, we received a robust number of transit projects. And that number is still reflective of work we did in partnership with the City of Phoenix, as well as Valley Metro last fall, to get a bit of an estimate on continuations of transit operations. Based on the submissions we received, that number is probably low, but wanted to ensure that, as I discussed before, we're going to continue to work with our partners on doing a system analysis to better plan for and see what that sort of bus transit system looks like. On the revenue side, not much change here with the exception of the number of high capacity transit projects we received. We increased our estimate for federal discretionary funding available through a competitive CIG program, acknowledging that if successful, we would see that federal pairing of funding coming through to the region. So you'll see now we're totaling between 63 and $90 billion in estimated needs relative to 31 to 35 billion dollars of revenues. And again, we have a lot more work to do. Obviously, we have a robust planning process ahead of us, but this is intended simply to help demonstrate we have a lot of needs in this region, and the conversations about finding the highest performing projects for which we can afford to move forward isn't going to be easy. And so wanted simply to give you that high level update of where we stand. And Chairman Mitchell, this marks my halfway point in the presentation. I've talked for quite some time. I'm going to take a pause in case there are questions from Regional Council.
Thank you, Ms. Thomas. Does anybody from the membership have any questions for Ms. Thomas? Okay, Ms. Thomas.
All right, we'll proceed on to the next half of the presentation. Next slide, please. And revisit the draft vision and goals that we circulated now over a month ago. Again, we're really looking for your feedback today as we want to build from here, moving forward our performance evaluation framework. Next slide. We presented this draft vision and goals largely driven by our values mapping research that we had completed last year, where we heard from over 10,000 residents here in the region about what's important to them. And as noted at the beginning of my presentation, what I'm going to do is focus on providing you reflection back on the kinds of comments we've already received, not just from our management committee work group, but from our policy committees, including management committee and transportation policy committee. You'll see the draft vision statement at the top. We have noted that perhaps in the last sentence that residents deserve, that term deserve, we might want to revisit that word choice in particular. When looking at the 6 goals here, nothing outstanding or perhaps shocking to any of you. The importance, of course, of economic vitality to our investment portfolio. For our resiliency goal, we've heard suggestions that perhaps we want to tighten this language and really emphasize the flexibility and adaptability of our long-range plan. For quality of life, our 3rd goal there, acknowledgement that maybe we've overused the term quality of life and that we should really focus on the key tenets of this goal, which are proposed to being public health and environmental sustainability. For our safety goal, a high amount of support for this being a priority. You saw it certainly in the call for project submissions as well. And really actually strengthening this goal, acknowledging in particular our vulnerable users, our bicyclists and pedestrians, for which has been an issue this region in particular has been focused on of recent. Our systems preservation goal, certainly something we talked at length about, recognizing that this region has already invested $10 billion into a transportation system. And then finally, our mobility goal here at the end, discussion as it comes to equitable access and recognition in particular, that not all transportation solutions are alike and that our region is extremely diverse. In particular, acknowledgement that transit investments aren't the same and really need to be reflective of the need and distinct and unique development patterns that are across our region. Next slide. You'll see here these draft goals, RTP goals, and how they align to federal guidance. And you'll see here a really strong support and conduit to federal guidance and how our federal formula funds translate down to our region. Next slide. We also presented definitions for regional significance. Not an easy task. We spent a lot of time and energy on this particularly, and it really is an important aspect as we look into really having to narrow down and identify the highest performing of projects and priorities throughout our region. So next slide. You'll see here what we use to inform these draft definitions. We, of course, had to start with where the feds tell us regional significance lands and really the purpose of our regional transportation plan, focusing on that regional benefit. We also did a robust peer review, hoping that we could steal somebody else's good ideas. And what we've learned is there isn't a magic bullet. Regional significance really is intended and reflects the priorities of our regions. But when you look at the largest metropolitan centers, there is a little bit more consistency, recognizing those higher order of magnitude sorts of investments. Some regions have a threshold of investment amount. So projects are regionally significant if they're at least $200,000 or $300,000, let's say, in a capital investment. We also used the opportunity provided to us, which was the call for projects. With the 1,300 different submissions that we received, we dug in and looked at why you submitted those projects, why you said they were important to you to help foster this definition. We also finally wanted to make sure that we were being consistent with historic precedent and certainly recognition of both Proposition 300 and Proposition 400. Next slide. So you'll see here we are presenting two different definitions of regional significance. The one at the top, a regionally significant project, this really reflects kind of the discrete projects, things that we would include in our traffic demand model, or the discrete kinds of projects that we can uniquely evaluate and assess their outcomes therein. But you'll also see a second definition, and this is for a regionally significant program. You'll remember that at the beginning of my presentation, I highlighted that well, we have three major life cycle programs that we spend our vast majority of attention to: our Freeway Life Cycle Program, our Arterial Life Cycle Program, and our Transit Life Cycle Program. We do have a handful, albeit smaller, regionally significant programs that this region has identified as really important. And so we wanted to recognize that maybe an individual project may not be regionally significant, but taken as a whole, or a collection of smaller projects that perhaps are unique to different circumstances in our diverse region. When you take all of those in whole, they may reflect a regional priority. And so this regional significant program definition is intended to reflect that diversity that we see across our region, and as a way to be inclusive to providing that flexibility that we have heard and we certainly see needed as we move forward. Next slide. So where do we go from here? I promise I'm finalizing up my presentation now. Next slide. We still have a lot of work to do in just processing the data that we've received thus far. As noted, we're looking forward to your feedback on the draft vision and goals as presented here today, so that we can take that concurrence and start building on the evaluation factors. So how can we evaluate how individual projects or programs get us closer to the things that we've identified as really important in this region? We'll have to pull together that full needs catalog. It's not just the 1,300 submissions from the call for projects, but as we've discussed at length before, it's the deferred projects out of Proposition 400. It's the investments that have been studied from a regional scale and other needs that we need to consider as we move forward. And then into the fall and winter in our scenario planning process, whereby we can see how different policies ultimately influence our outcomes, or perhaps how different funding scenarios may be able to deliver more different suites of projects. Next slide. So with that, Chairman Mitchell, that completes my presentation. We're interested in hearing your feedback or any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Thomas. Make sure you get a drink of water. And thank you for your detailed presentation. Are there any questions for Ms. Thomas from the membership? It's a lot of information for us to absorb, even if we were in person. All right. Again, thank you, Ms. Thomas, for your presentation. Information and discussion only is what the item was about. So thank you so much. We're gonna move on to the next item is agenda number 8. It's a legislative update. So MAG Policy Director of Government Relations, Director Nathan Pryor will give us a report. Nathan?
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Regional Council. Kind of complementing and dovetailing the previous two presentations from Mr. Bullen and Ms. Kester-Thomas. They both relayed that a major component, significant component of our transportation funding is federal funding. With that being said, we are tracking the upcoming surface transportation reauthorization. So currently, We live with the FAST Act that's set to expire at the end of September. And there are proposals coming out now about what's going to come after the FAST Act, namely the INVEST Act, which has been proposed by the House, is a 5-year bill which sees significant spending increases in investment transportation, about 46% increase. On June 11th, Congressman Stanton hosted and held a roundtable of local elected officials, and Mayor Gallego and Mayor Giles, among others, were on that roundtable, as well as Eric Anderson and a number of stakeholders. 2 issues came to were a topic of conversation, which I'm going to focus on today. And in fact, that slide in front of you is a letter that was sent out on June 16th to Congressman Stanton with these 2 issues in mind. The first is the INVEST Act is proposing additional core programs. This has the effect of limiting our flexibility. So currently we enjoy flexibility where we can, for example, flex highway funding to transit and bicycle and pedestrian programs. Under what's being proposed, it's additional programs which will limit flexibility, becomes more prescriptive. So that was an issue at hand, and the proposal here, solution is to perhaps give larger regions more flexibility so they can allocate dollars to priority needs within the region. The second issue is regarding funding formulas. The current funding formulas go back to safety lieu. So that was the surface transportation legislation passed in 2005. And it has 2009 formulas. And an example of this is using 2005 traffic volumes and the 2000 census for population. So this obviously hurts fast-growing states like Arizona. As I mentioned, the INVEST Act is a 5-year proposed bill. So we would be living with 2000 census information into the formula funds well throughout 2025. Again, this issue is in that letter. It is posted on the regional council meeting page and was distributed to members of the TPC as well. This letter was signed by Mayor Mitchell as regional council chair and Mayor Wires as TPC chair. The bill has been marked up and is moving forward, albeit a bit of a pessimistic outlook in terms of where it will go with the Senate, but perhaps this is an opportunity for compromise in the transportation reauthorization legislation. So we will continue to track this issue. Of late, there's still talk about perhaps another stimulus. We don't know if transportation will be wrapped up in that stimulus. There's a lot of talk about is there a real benefit of having transportation as part of the stimulus, as we saw some pros and cons with the ARA proposal back during the Great Recession. So we continue to track this too. We're also watching the state side, as Mr. Bolin mentioned, regarding ADOT forecasts and outlooks. So we'll continue to track all these and more. And Mr. Chairman, that concludes my report. I am available to take any questions.
Thank you, Nathan. This is for information and discussion only. Does any members of the body have a comment or question for Nathan? Seeing none. Thank you, Nathan. Moving on to the next item, number 9, is the appointment of members and officers for the Transportation Policy Committee. Mr. Anderson will be reporting on this item.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The MAG committee operating policies provide that the chair and the vice chair for the Transportation Policy Committee are duly elected members of a MAG member agency. And it provides that the election of the chair and the vice chair will take place during the June annual meeting, which is today. The chair and the vice chair serve 1-year terms with a succession of positions occurring through the ascending order of officers. Therefore, the vice chair becomes chair, and then we appoint a new vice chair. The current vice chair, Mayor Kate Gallego from the city of Phoenix, would succeed to the chair position. On May 7th, a memorandum was sent to regional council members requesting letters of interest regarding the appointments of member agency representatives to the TPC and for the vice chair position. We received 1 letter of interest for the vice chair position. That was from Mayor Harkey from the city of Chandler. So the requested motion for today would be to appoint the members and officers of the Transportation Policy Committee, including Mayor Gallego as chair and Mayor Harkey as vice chair. Be happy to answer any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. With that being said, can we get a motion for the appointment of the members and officers of the Transportation Policy Committee?
Robin Barker, so moved.
It's been moved by Councilmember Barker. Is there a second?
Jenny
I'll
Dickey.
second.
Mayor Dickey seconded it. All right, I'm gonna have to do a roll call vote. Councilmember Barker,
Yes.
Governor Lewis, Mayor Barney,
Yes.
Mayor Beinwillner,
Aye.
Mayor Daniels, Mayor Daniels, Mayor Dickey,
Aye.
Mayor Gallego,
Aye.
Mayor Giles.
Aye.
Proxy vote for Mayor Hall, Vice Mayor Chris Judd,
Aye.
Mayor Hartke.
Yes.
I'm gonna go back. Mayor Daniels votes yes for the record. Mayor Hermosillo,
Yes.
Mayor Laval,
Yes.
Mayor Lord,
Yes.
Mayor Meck. Mayor Meck. I vote aye. Mayor Molina. Mayor Peterson. Mayor Price.
Yes.
Mayor Schoaf.
Yes.
Mayor Schoaf.
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Tovar. Mayor Tovar. Mayor Wires.
I vote aye.
Mayor Weiss.
Aye.
That's all I have voted. Is anyone else I missed that would like to vote? And if I've not called on your name?
Mayor Mitchell, this is Mayor Tovar. I vote aye.
Okay, thank you. With that, the motion does approve. Next item is number 10 is the election of regional council officers and executive committee members. On May 20th of 2020, the MAG nominating committee met and recommended a slate of officers for 2021. The MAG officer positions are chair, vice chair, and treasurer. In accordance with the MAG nomination process, we have 4 at-large members who are also nominated to serve on the executive committee. The slate includes chair, Mayor Jerry Wires, City of Glendale. As vice chair, Mayor John Giles from the City of Mesa. As treasurer, Ken Weiss, City of Avondale. And 4 at-large members, which is Mayor Kate Gallego of Phoenix, Mayor Anna Tovar of Tolleson, and Mayor Kenneth Wise of Avondale. And Mayor Les Peterson, Town of Carefree, and Mayor Kevin Harkey, the City of Chandler. Are there any questions for the membership? And if not, can I get a motion?
This is Mayor Barney. I move to approve the slate of candidates that you have just read for approval.
All righty, it's been moved by Mayor Barney. Is there a second?
Robin Barker, second.
It's been seconded by Mayor or Councilmember Barker. I'm gonna do a roll call vote. Councilmember Barker,
Yes.
Governor Lewis, Mayor Barney,
Yes.
Mayor Beinwillner,
Aye.
Mayor Daniels,
Aye.
Mayor Dickey,
Aye.
Mayor Gallego,
Aye.
Mayor Giles,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Chris Judd,
Aye.
Mayor Hartke,
Yes.
Mayor Hermosillo,
Aye.
Mayor Laval,
Yes.
Mayor Lord. Georgia, you there?
Yes.
Mayor Meck. I vote, Mayor Mitchell votes aye. Mayor Molina. Mayor Peterson. Thank you. Mayor Peterson. Thank you. Mayor Price.
Yes.
Mayor Schoaf.
Aye.
Mayor Tovar.
Aye.
Mayor Wires.
Aye.
Mayor Weiss.
Aye.
And Mayor Javier, or President Javier. If there's anyone I did not call that you would like to vote, can you please get my attention? That motion does carry forward. Thank you all. And I really want to appreciate everyone for stepping up and being on the executive committee as well as the regional council. With that, we'll move on to item number 11. It's the passing of the gavel. Bear with me here. The COVID-19 pandemic has affected our region in ways that we could not have anticipated at this time last year. You know, we've lost some loved ones, we've lost some jobs, and we have lost in-person connections, and we're having to take meetings to Zoom like we are now. But it's important to remember that we have not lost our commitment to our community. We have not abandoned our priorities, and we have not forgotten our dedication to service. There are bright spots that we have marked this past year, and celebration of these accomplishments is not only appropriate, but it's also imperative as we relentlessly address continued challenges. It is refreshing to note that MAG's work was minimally affected, and that we continue to address the issues and concerns that affect all of those living within our region. Here's an example. When the coronavirus hit, the Regional Analytics Division immediately turned its talents to fulfill a need for healthcare data. These included maps of vulnerable populations at greatest risk of COVID-19 and the locations of all healthcare facilities and hospitals. This information was valuable not only to member agencies, but also to the media as well as the public. Additionally, MAG's Human Services Division has been invaluable during the COVID-19 and helping to connect those experiencing homelessness to resources. As part of this effort, this May, we launched the annual Heat Relief Network to provide some options for those homeless in the Valley to have access to refuge sites during the summer heat. Another at-risk population includes domestic violence victims. And with the help of my colleagues, Mayor Wires and Mayor Gallego, and DV Council Chair Stephen Stahl, we created a public service announcement directed at those individuals who may be in trouble. And it has let domestic violence victims know that they have life-saving options for texting 911 if they can't safely voice call for help. I trust all of you have filled out your 2020 census and encouraged all of your residents to do the same. All of us have a stake in the 2020 census, and we are very grateful to MAG for their efforts. These include providing training and technical assistance for updating addresses and spearheading the iCount 2020 regional outreach campaign. An accurate count will mean billions of dollars, literally billions of dollars, for vital services such as schools, emergency services, hospitals, and of course, important transportation dollars. You know, it's easy to forget our pre-COVID world, but remember in-person meetings that you had to drive to as part of your work. Of course, now, as we are opening up, we're seeing rush hour again in our freeway system and in our arterial streets, and with that, a greater use of our freeways. Residents and travelers alike are getting to drive the new Loop 202 South Mountain Freeway, which opened up this past December. You see here in some of the pictures. The new freeway directly links the east and the west valleys and serves as a much needed alternative to I-10 through downtown Phoenix. It also delivers an important promise made to voters to complete the loop freeway system as well. And we made some progress in other areas, such as supporting legislation to allow for pre-screened visitors from Mexico to visit the entire state of Arizona. If passed, this legislation will assist us in our state's economic recovery. There's only a few of the many successes this year. I'd be remiss not to mention the work conducted to lay the foundation for the next regional transportation plan. The effort to develop a new plan that will replace Prop 400 will be a high priority for Mayor Wires and the rest of the council. So that is probably a perfect transition point that, and I want to thank you all very much for your support over this past year. I will miss working with all of you. And I got to mention that it's very humbling to work with such great leaders and servants in and around the valley. And it really shows that we really do work together for the betterment of our region. So thank you all very much. And at this time, I would like to officially pass the gavel to our new regional chair, Glendale Mayor Jerry Wires. Mr. Wires, here you go.
Well, thank you, Mark. This can be a big bill to fill, but no, thank you. Real excited about this position, and on behalf of the regional council, I do want to express our gratitude for your leadership over the past year. Before I continue, we do have a brief video of a few moments that we've captured during your time at MAG, and I'll ask staff if they would play that now, please.
MAG and the partnership sharing the stage have worked tirelessly over the 3 decades to see this moment really come to fruition. It is my honor to be the chair who bears final witness to delivery of a promise to the Maricopa County voters to complete the Loop 101 and the Loop 202 system. It truly is a historic moment.
This is the 6th year in a row we've seen an increase in homelessness. And I got to tell you, it's going to take many, many hands to help solve some of the challenges that we have. And it really, truly is a regional approach. And as the chair of Maricopa Association of Governments, MAG, we're doing our part in terms of regionally, how we're all working together.
Thank you.
As Mayor Mitchell noted, our communities and region are consistently changing, which is creating somewhat of a new world. Never has it been more important to be prepared for the future. MAG continues to focus on 5 critical areas, that being safe and smart travel, protecting the environment, growing the economy, improving quality of life, and safe and efficient operations. We have a major goal ahead, developing a new regional transportation plan. The current sales tax that expires in 2025, and I feel that one of my most important tasks in the coming year will be to support the continued development of a performance-based plan that will guide us as policymakers in addressing the region's transportation needs. Now, I know that this isn't going to be easy. The most recent estimates for transportation needs are somewhere between $60 and $90 billion. With the projected revenue from the current sources far less, which means that there's going to be an awful lot of hard work ahead for all of us with difficult choices that are going to have to be made. We continue to grow as a region. We must continue to expand our transportation system, and what we build also has to be maintained. Now, we will look for innovation and technology to carve out new and more cost-effective transportation solutions, while also improving the safety of our transportation system, especially for the pedestrians. We will continue to look at ways to protect public health by improving air quality, as well address the human needs of the region on issues surrounding homelessness, domestic violence, and aging. But together, we have the talent and the grit to take on tough challenges. Those challenges are opportunities for us to create a thriving, strong, attractive region as we adapt to these new circumstances. I look forward to working with all of you on these goals, but I do want to remind you, please always feel free to let me know how I can best support you. Now, I'd like to turn the next item on the agenda, item number 12, for a request for future agenda items. Have we any? Okay, hearing none. With that said, thank all of you for your time. Mark, thank you so much for your friendship, for all your hard work, and really, truly, the thing that impresses me about you is the fact that you always want to make a difference in people's lives, and that is a slogan here in Glendale. We strive each and every day to make a positive difference in people's lives. So thank you so much for that. You know, all of your time that you've spent is greatly appreciated by a lot of people that unfortunately don't get to shake your hands and tell you thank you, good job. So if everyone will have a great summer, we'll see you all in August. With that said, this meeting's adjourned. Thank you so much.
Thank you.